Hello all, welcome back to our second installment in our psychological section of our sports science videos. This video is all about accessing those performance zones that we talked about in the last psychological video. Those two zones, to remind you, are flow state and clutch state. We identified in the last video that flow state is more suitable for training and not really suitable for competition. Whereas clutch state is very suitable for competition, but you do need to specifically train it. Have you ever wondered why some athletes seem to thrive under pressure while others crumble? Or why the same pre-game routine that works for one person might not work for another? Today we're going to learn about two methods for accessing our two performance states, flow and clutch state. For decades, sports psychology was dominated by the inverted U hypothesis, or the bell curve, first proposed by Yerkes and Dodson in 1908. It's now known as the Yerkes and Dodson law. As we can see from the graph, if you have low mental arousal, you'll probably have a not great performance. If you have high mental arousal, you'll probably have a not great mental performance. Whereas if you're in the middle, you will have a good performance. But here's where it gets interesting. This arousal isn't just physical. It's intimately connected to your cognitive processes. As your arousal levels rise, your attention sharpens, your reaction times improve, and your brain becomes primed for quick decision making. It's like your entire system is getting a performance-enhancing upgrade. Now, this relationship between arousal and performance isn't just theoretical. It's rooted in the very way our brains function. Neuroscientists have identified key brain regions involved in this dance of arousal and performance. The amygdala, the almond-shaped structure deep in our brains, plays a crucial role in processing emotions and triggering the body's stress response. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, our brain's CEO, works to regulate these emotional responses and maintain focus on the task at hand. When arousal hits that sweet spot, these brain regions work in harmony. The amygdala provides just enough emotional charge to keep us engaged, while the prefrontal cortex keeps things under control, allowing us to channel that energy productively. It's like a perfectly choreographed neural ballet. It will be slightly different depending on whether you are in flow state or clutch state. For some people, it will look different depending on who you are. Some people prefer to be more relaxed to be able to perform at their best. Some people prefer to be more nervous to perform at their best. Since that original research in 1908, traditional approaches on how to control this arousal have come about. The first is progressive muscle relaxation. It's where you systematically tense and release muscle groups, helping to quiet both body and mind. It creates a state of deep physical relaxation that can improve performance focus. You also have controlled breathing, using slow, deliberate breathing patterns to help regulate your nervous system, bringing you into an optimal state of readiness while reducing anxiety. We have positive self-talk. Converting negative thoughts into encouraging internal dialogues builds confidence and maintains composure during high-pressure moments. Finally, we have visualization, something we talked about in a previous video as well. Mentally rehearsing successful performance in vivid detail prepares your brain and body to execute those moves. A lot of these strategies are fairly common when it comes to athletes' pre-competition routines in freestyle kayaking. And the research is clear, they do work. However, the Yerkes-Dodson law and its associated arousal control techniques have been foundational in sports psychology. They present a somewhat oversimplified view of athletic performance. The model suggests a universal sweet spot for arousal levels. But the reality is far more nuanced and individual. Each athlete has their own unique optimal performance state, and what works perfectly for one competitor might not be the best for another. This is where individual zones of optimum functioning, or IZOFs, come in. They offer a more sophisticated and personal approach. IZOFs were first proposed by Dr. Yuri Hanin in the 1970s, and it challenges the traditional one-fits-all approach to athletic performance. Instead of assuming all athletes perform best when calm or moderately aroused, IZOF suggests that each athlete has their own unique emotional and psychological state where they perform at their peak. Each athlete has their own unique blend of emotions and energy levels where they perform at their best. Some athletes might need to feel a bit anxious and excited to perform well, while others might need to feel calm and relaxed and focused. Your IZOF is made up of 4 key components that work together. You can see it on an example graph below, taken from an Olympic cross-country skier. First of all, we have pleasant and helpful emotions, like confidence or excitement. Pleasant but unhelpful emotions, like being too relaxed. Unpleasant but helpful emotions, like nervous energy or anger. Unpleasant but and unhelpful emotions, like fear or doubt. The key is identifying which specific emotions from each category help you perform at your best, rather than following a standard formula. It's about finding your own unique emotional sweet spot, tracking when you perform well, and noting exactly how you felt during those moments. This is some quite new research, so I'm just going to go through the research foundation that exists for this strategy now. In 2014, research by Ruiz and Hannan demonstrated that Olympic athletes consistently performed better when they reached their individual optimal zones, regardless of whether those states would be considered ideal by traditional standards. In 2016, Wilson did a meta-analysis of over 50 studies and showed athletes who trained according to their IZOF improved performance by an average of 20% compared to those following standard arousal control techniques. A 2018 study in the Journal of Sports Psychology found that elite athletes' optimal anxiety levels varied up to 45% between individuals. This contradicts hugely the Yates-Dodson law and really does highlight the importance of an IZOF. This has led to a real paradigm shift in sports psychology. The IZOF theory challenges the standard approaches with plenty of evidence about performance improvement, consistency, and long-term adherence. With performance improvement, standard techniques give you a 15% average improvement, whereas IZOF-based methods give you a 35% average improvement. This is from the 2016 meta-analysis study. Consistency. Standard techniques give you a 60% reliability. IZOF techniques give you an 85% reliability. This is done by a separate study by Thompson in 2021. All of these will be linked down below. Our long-term adherence. Long-term adherence, standard techniques allow for a 45% maintenance practice. IZOFs allow for a 78% maintenance practice. This is done in a 2020 study. Now, as a freestyle kayak athlete, when you hear this, when you hear those numbers, you can't help but get excited about the possibilities and how this might improve your performance. Using an IZOF can help you more reliably access flow and clutch states. Using an IZOF can lead to a greater improvement in performance. And using IZOFs means you're more likely to adhere to this type of training to improve those things. Based on the studies carried out that I've mentioned in this video, I have a strategy for using IZOFs in your training. It's important to note here that you need to make sure you are clear in your training whether you're training flow state or clutch state, as if you get these muddled up, your IZOF will be less clear and it will be less useful for you down the line. So, my recommended training takes place over 2 weeks. This is assuming you will be doing around 3 to 5 sessions a week, either flow state training or clutch state training, or both with these sessions. During these sessions, the aim in the initial 2-week period is to just identify the emotions you feel on a day-to-day basis throughout a normal training session, whether that's flow state or clutch state. To do this, you will need to keep a training journal. In this training journal, you will be required to record your emotional state before, during, and after training. You will also need to record the perceived performance in the training. This can be trickier for flow state sessions as it is a bit more ambiguous as what is successful than a clutch state session where you can basically go off the ride score that you do under pressure during your clutch state session. To record your emotions, I use an emotion wheel. This allows you to identify at the center of the wheel what are the broad emotions that you're feeling. If you're unsure if you're necessarily feeling one of these emotions, it allows you to move further out in the circle to more nuanced versions of that emotion. During the first few sessions, I recommend going through these emotions and giving a simple yes or no whether or not you are feeling them. Remember, you need to do this before your session, during your session, and after your session. Record these in your training journal and repeat. As you go through this process, you will start to identify emotions that you very rarely or never feel. As you continue with this, you will identify the core set of emotions that you do feel before, during, and after a training session. Once you've completed 6 to 10 sessions where you've recorded your emotions before, during, and after, and given yourself a perceived or actual performance score, you need to start mapping these emotional states to our 4 categories in our IZOF. This means that you need to identify which emotions are unhelpful negative emotions. You need to identify which emotions are helpful negative emotions, helpful positive emotions, and unhelpful positive emotions. If you want, you can search online and use pre-built examples for this, but they'll be less accurate than using the emotions you have recorded yourself. This is something that is extremely useful to get a second opinion on as well, either from a coach or a training partner, as sometimes it can be quite hard to truly understand the feelings that you are displaying. During this time of mapping our range of emotions to those 4 categories, I recommend you get on the water and really try and focus on those emotions you have identified and really try and understand what category they go into. This is something that's very easy to say, but I know from experience it takes a huge amount of practice and precision. And my estimate of 2 weeks is actually quite a short time frame, especially if you're doing this without the help of a coach who understands and has trained in this. Once you have done this step, you will have all the emotions you regularly feel put into generally broad categories. And remember, just because it's an emotion that might be considered a bad emotion doesn't mean it will harm performance. Our 3rd step to this process should take place over a couple of weeks again. And this is where you need to focus on categorizing the intensity of the emotions and feelings that you are feeling throughout the session. You should already be very familiar with all the emotions as you've spent a couple of weeks before now documenting them and the performance that go along with it. During these sessions, give each emotion a score out of 10 before, during, and after your session. And again, record your performance. This is where you can start to create your own personal IZOF graph. Once you've generated your first IZOF graph, the next step and the final step, this is where you record your emotional state before your session, including the intensity of each emotion. Check your IZOF and estimate what your performance should look like. Record your actual performance and review your emotional state to identify any differences. This is where the real practice comes in. This is where this IZOF should become part of your regular training. This process can go on for a while. The end goal is to become so familiar with this process and your emotions that based on your feelings you can predict a small range of possible performances based on your current emotional state. However, this does open up a really big question. How can we guarantee great performance? How do I make my emotions and feelings line up to what I want when I want them to? The short answer is practice. The long answer is very specific emotional regulation, which will be coming in future videos. In conclusion, a good starting point is the Yerkes-Dodson law. It's simple to apply and simple to use day to day. However, if you want to improve your optimal performance beyond the standard, your optimal performance state is uniquely yours. Through careful self-observation, experimentation, and consistent practice with the exercise provided, you can identify and reliably access your IZOF for each key performance state, flow state, and clutch state. Now remember, please be patient with the discovery process. Keep detailed records, stay open to unexpected findings, and regularly reassess and adjust your understanding of your zone as you change as a person and develop as an athlete. I will include a full worksheet for IZOFs on my blog, which will be linked in the video description. Your journey to peak performance is personal. Embrace the process and find your unique path to excellence. And I'll see you on the water. I'll see you next time.